Warmly welcoming you to How Does She Do It, the podcast, with me, your host, Jo Ferroni. Join me on my journey as I explore finding a gentle balance in both business and life, because being kind to ourselves is our superpower. Before I introduce you to my guest today, I wanted to invite you all to come and join me for some online networking in just a few weeks' time. We come back after the summer holidays with our first event on Thursday, the 9th of September, and I would love to welcome you. My events are inclusive, they are friendly, there is nothing to be worried about if you have never been networking in your life. I promise to look after you. So we're meeting on Thursday, the 9th of September. There's a 10 o'clock start and we go on until 12, but if you can only attend for part of that, that's absolutely fine. To find us, head over to howdoesshedoit.life, click on the events tab and you can secure your space from there. I would love to see you. My conversation today is with Pam Cottman, a former assistant head teacher and passionate believer in unlocking untapped potential. Pam spent 14 years working with students, staff, parents and governors to support the personal and professional development of young people, her colleagues and her teams through teaching, mentoring, coaching, and giving them time and space to think and to be heard. Today, Pam is a resilience coach, trainer and speaker, and a mum of 2 boys. She set up her business in 2018 and is now an ICF accredited coach, supporting individuals, schools and organisations to reach their potential by building resilience, a clear understanding of value and self-awareness, a growth mindset, confidence in mind and body, and the self-care tools to cope with change, challenge and stress. There is so much to take away from the episode, whether you're a business owner or maybe someone struggling to keep up with the expectations of working part-time, in quotation marks, and keeping on top of all the extras and aiming for a balanced life. Pam's story and all that helped her pave her path along the way is enlightening to hear. And through her open and honest account, you can hear that it's all meant so very much to her. As always, I could have listened all day, but I respect your time and Pam's too, so I reined myself in. I'd love you to check out Pam's wonderful Facebook group, Resilient Women, and please also pop in and follow her at Pam Cottman on Instagram, where you'll find oodles of inspiration. As a side note, I should add that as we closed our conversation, we both vowed to put the kettle on and sit out in our gardens to enjoy the sunshine and reflect on our lovely time together. And we did, because we can. Enjoy the show. Pam Cottman, how the devil are you?
I am good, thank you. The sun is shining outside, therefore everything in the world is good.
Hey, I love it. I feel exactly the same this morning. It really does lift the mood, doesn't it? Lifts the spirits and lifts the little corners of our mouths as well.
Absolutely, every bit of that.
Thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. I am so excited to have our conversation. And I was thinking back last night, getting ready for today, thinking it's probably about 3 years since we met now. And we met at a book launch up in London and haven't looked back since. It's been so wonderful to stay connected with you. So thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. I was thinking of that too, and just how one meeting sparks other meetings and connections. And yeah, I feel the same way. Lovely to be able to be with you today and looking forward to talking with you.
Well, this is all about you. So I reckon we should crack on and tell the audience a little bit more about you. Obviously, I've given you an intro in the show opening, if you like, but it would be really wonderful if you might like to start by telling us a little bit about how you came to be where you are today. But first of all, what were you doing before you ran your own business?
So I was a teacher for 14 years. It wasn't one of those things that I had always wanted to do, but it was obvious to everybody else except me. I'd been a gymnastics coach. I'd been a summer camp counsellor. I had done those things in my kind of teens and early 20s and gone and done a degree that I was really interested in. I did English and French with absolutely no clue as to what I was going to do with it afterwards at all. But that working with younger people and teaching was just a little thread that was running through everything I'd done up to that point. So having left uni and temped a bit and tried a quick job in financial PR, which was absolutely not me. Quite quickly realised that. I signed up to do PGCE in secondary English and really didn't look back. I loved it. It was one of those, I feel like I'm in the right place. I did a placement in a school very near to me. It was one I could have gone to when I was younger, and it just felt right. It felt like the right place for me. And having got in and got started as a secondary English teacher, because they offered me a job after that placement, I just started looking around and saw the different possibilities and paths that different teachers take, and was very much drawn to, well, it wasn't even just the pastoral side of kind of looking after children as well as their kind of learning. It was a more holistic approach. It just looked so much fun. The head of year 7 before me was just a joy, and that pastoral path was the one that I followed pretty much from the beginning. I became head of year 7. I was head of sixth form, and after that became assistant head I was assistant head and head of sixth form at the same time, and then became assistant head in charge of pastoral. And it was, hard work, but it was absolutely it was that holistic piece. It was okay, I can sit in the classroom and I love what I'm teaching and I love helping the students to progress, but it was always what's going on outside of the classroom and what more can we do to be supporting you to show up and be at your best, which doesn't sound too dissimilar to what I do now. But I suppose I can look back on it now, and the real turning point for me was coming back after my first maternity leave. So when I came back in, that's when after quite a lengthy, challenging process of job change and stuff that went on during my maternity leave, I came back and I was assistant head. And I remember sitting down with our school counsellor, who I'd worked with for years, and just saying, look, is there any common thread? Is there anything more we can be doing to support students? Is there anything that kind of runs through it? And she said resilience. And it was just, I look back on it now, and I've been writing again about it recently, and I can look back on it now and go, oh my gosh, that conversation changed my path. It made me think, oh, okay, so rather than just dealing with things as they come up, let's look at what more we can be doing for everybody to give them the tools to help them, manage the inevitable stuff that life throws at us. And so, yeah, I had my kind of remaining few years in teaching before I eventually left were about a whole school resilience project, and started with students and then went, hold on a minute, staff and parents and governors and all of us. And I mean, that's kind of what brought me to what I'm doing now, really.
Wow. So before we get on to what you're doing now, I just want to sort of go back and just say, that's incredible. What a fabulous journey you've been on, and what an incredibly firm grounding you built. Whether you realized what you were building at the time or not actually is beside the point, but what an incredible grounding you just paved the way. And the way that you were able to look at, like you say, these children, it wasn't just about the learning, it was that all-encompassing holistic approach and holistic view of these children. And then how it grew to, as you knew as a teacher, under pressure, with all sorts of expectations. You knew that the children were obviously under pressure as they were developing, as they had, like you say, all this stuff coming at them. And of course the parents as well. I know I say this a lot, but we are all human. And if we can be understood, if we can be offered tools and be supported by others, I'm sure it can be the difference between happiness and the complete and utter opposite.
And that was exactly what a member of my team said when we were putting this program together, about when we were looking at every element of what school felt like for these students. It was a grammar school. It comes with a lot of pressure, whether from the kids or the teachers or the parents. It comes with a lot of pressure. And this particular member of my team just said exactly what you said of, it's not just the students, what about the staff? Because how will the students know that this stuff is important? How will they know that these tools can be useful and matter if they're not being shown it every day, and if they're not experiencing it as part of their everyday, every minute experience at school? Otherwise, they end up, as we all do, thinking it's like, oh, that's just a course, or that's just a lesson, and I will be really engaged in it at the time, and then I'll just shove that notebook or that handout in a cupboard and I won't look at it again until whenever, when actually, if we want to support ourselves, it has to be something that we're doing as a, if not daily, then regular practice. And that it was a massive undertaking. I remember we had a meeting. We used to have regular support from our local children and adolescent mental health service team. And one of the team that we'd worked with, who was a parent at the school as well, so she kind of really knew the context, but worked as, I think she was a clinical psychologist. She said, oh, this all sounds great. She said, but to be honest, if you could just teach everyone to breathe, that would be great. And I kind of laughed and went, oh, no, there's loads. We could do loads more than that. And actually, I massively underestimated how enormous a shift it was. And to be making that kind of level of change in a context where people were under pressure and felt like they had plenty on their plates already. And I think in many ways felt like, oh, this is just another thing to deal with. And didn't have that distance to be able to say, but if we're thinking about the staff level or a parent level, if I help myself and I better understand this stuff and I better have the tools to help me manage life, let alone learning, then I'm going to be better able to support the children that I'm working, the young adults that I'm working with. So that just breathe is one that's really stuck with me, but I think is so true when you are thinking about making any kind of change.
I agree. Something else I'd love to just pick up on there that really struck me was that by working all around, if you like, with the children, the parents, the teachers, not only were you teaching in this educational setting, you were living it and therefore mirroring it. And I know as a parent that, and as a wife, actually, if we are doing these things and people can see that from the outside looking in towards us, that is going to, they're not just learning, oh, you should do this. They are seeing that you're doing it and the results that come from it as well. And I just think that is such a powerful way for people to learn. And especially when you think about how many children learn in different ways, don't they? You have different types of learners. So I should imagine that by doing this as a big entity, it must have had such a positive and lasting effect.
It was interesting. The name that my team came up for the program, we called it, we had and this is why it was so challenging. We had so many different things that we wanted to do with it. We had like 11 different strands or skills or ideas that we really wanted to develop in the children. Resilience was part of it, and empathy, and you will notice I will be struggling to think of all the others because we came up with essentially an 11-strand concept. It was enormous. And, we struggled to remember what they all were. We had a couple of acronyms that the kids could remember, and kind of, it was something that people slightly made fun of because they heard it so often. But I thought, God, even if they're talking about it, even if they're making fun of it, it's landing somewhere. It's starting to stick, as you said, and they're sometimes hearing stuff often enough can help. But I think that reflection, that mirroring piece is so important, whether you are, a teacher in a classroom, one friend among a group of friends, a parent, a leader, a team member, in any context. I think just noticing that what you do for yourself can have an impact on those around you is kind of an approach that I didn't really realize I was doing at the time, but is just such an important part of what I do now. It's that start with you, because you can't really start with anybody else, and then see what happens as the ripples its way out.
Yeah, and you can see this. Our listeners can't, but my smile is just bursting right now. It resonates so deeply and it is so positive that, oh, amazing, absolutely amazing. And we haven't even got on to what you're doing now. So what happened next?
So as I said, I started that particular role when I went back after my first maternity leave. and I'm sure lots of mums will appreciate this, I was working 3 days a week. So I had 2 days at home of swimming lessons and fun stuff. But I did constantly feel kind of torn. Interestingly, when I was at work, I knew that my son was at nursery and he was having a great time. And I didn't actually find it too difficult to focus on work when I was at work. That said, I really found I was just willing my son to nap on the days when I wasn't at work so I could crack on with emails or prep a lesson or do some marking or something, because as any teacher will testify, you're never working 3 days. I think anyone who works part-time knows that you never really work just those 3 days. So there was that piece. And there was also, and I can see this more now than I did at the time, because I was in the leadership team, that involved a lot of evenings. So even if I wasn't the teacher delivering on a particular parents' evening, I might be the person locking up. So I would be coming home and my son would already be in bed, or there were so many evenings I was coming home and he was already sitting having milk on the sofa with his dad. And I can look back now and think, I don't regret that period, but it was a real starting to notice I wasn't sure I wanted this moving forwards. And also my job was really starting to change. And again, I can only see this. I didn't see it. I didn't get it at the time, but reflection has shown me that I was doing less of the work that I really loved. So I love talking about stuff that I'm passionate in. So assemblies were brilliant, especially when there was no particular agenda or theme. I could just talk about what I noticed was going on and try and make it relevant for, the sixth form at the time, for example. Well, I was doing less of that, and I was doing less one-to-one stuff, and I was just all of the stuff that I really loved, I was doing less of. So I became pregnant with my second son, and it was the light at the end of the tunnel for me. It was just get me to then when I know I'm going on maternity leave. And I vividly remember it was about 7 p.m, again, another evening on a Friday. It was the last day before I was going. And I remember walking out and thinking, I don't think I'm going to walk back in. No. And I had absolutely no idea what that next step would look like. But I left with no, I didn't say to anybody, right, I'm not coming back. It was I'm pretty confident in myself that I'm not going to want to go back and do this. So over the course of the next year, 18 months, I just sort of allowed space for that. I started talking to different people about, well, what else could I do? And I like the idea of learning and development stuff, but I don't really have a clue about how to do anything with it. And then through a friend of a friend was put in touch with a career coach. And I went along to a session that she ran along with, 5 or 6 other very successful, competent, capable women who were all sat round a table going, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I know I don't want to do that anymore, which felt wonderful to be in the company of other people feeling and thinking the same way.
Oh, how reassuring. You're not the only one.
I'm sure you find this with your community, but I would say the biggest thing I find in the work that I do now is just people going, oh, thank God it's not just me. I thought I was the only one. And there is such reassurance in that. But yeah, I started working with her one-to-one and just really going back to basics on what did I enjoy in my role, or in fact, every role I'd ever had. This really powerful exercise that took me right back to the gymnastics coaching and the summer camp counsellor and just everything, really starting to go back and cherry pick out, having taken all of the work out of my life, what do I want to put back in? It was the same approach my husband took when he left teaching is, okay, there's nothing here now. What do I choose to put back in? How much do I want to put back in? And so, I don't know, I guess it probably was about 18 months after that, maybe a bit before, I signed up for a coaching course. I went to a taster morning with Barefoot Coaching. I walked into a kind of, meeting room in a hotel in London and started listening to what was being said and talking to the other people in the room. And it felt like home.
I can feel all the tingles now, Pam.
I phoned my husband on the way home, was like, this feels like home. This is the right place. I know I'm getting teary thinking about it.
Oh,
it was
how amazing.
It was everything. It was everything that was important to me in work again. It was about giving people time and space. It was about listening. It was about having proper time to listen to people. And, in that taster morning, we had, we did an exercise where we listened to a partner for 5 minutes. I mean, that's nothing, but 5 minutes of focused listening is so powerful and such a gift, and we don't do it often enough. So I signed up, it was a serious investment, but I signed up fairly quickly after that. I started September 2018 to do a coaching program with them that would lead me to a business and personal coaching certificate that's led me to International Coach Federation, ACC coaching status, and to these post-grad essays, which will be in by the time listeners hear this, and to a whole new career that is coaching in all sorts of ways around what next. And I need some space and time to think. But I guess the sort of big umbrella of my business is around resilience. Back to that conversation with the school counsellor, it's supporting individuals, so in one-to-one coaching, in working with groups, in working with schools, again, staff, students, parents, and working with organisations I could never have dreamt of working with, that I knew nothing about, in industries I know nothing about, but helping all of them to have those tools to manage the stuff that life throws at us, and to enable them to feel more motivated and supported to reach their potential, whatever their potential is, without comparison to other people. It's what I realised lit me up in schools, and it's what lights me up every day now. I still can't quite believe that cherry picking has led me to today.
I would love to just talk about that cherry picking for a moment, because I'm thinking about people who I have spoken to, both in the community and both in my personal life as well. Actually, it can be a very daunting prospect, can't it? I'm almost imagining, because you mentioned cherry picking, I'm almost imagining like an empty fruit bowl. Okay, so we've taken everything out of our life, which is that fruit bowl, and that empty fruit bowl, as we're going to use that as an analogy, is it's bare, it's empty. Or you could look at it as, this is potential, because I can, as you absolutely did, and like you say, your husband did as well, I can put whatever I want in there. And I'm a unique person. I've had unique experiences throughout my life. And therefore, what I put in here is going to be unique to me. And that is incredible, actually, because I think that the way that we maybe were conditioned as we grew up, just because of society as things were, I think we almost were led to believe that we have to follow a certain path, and it's all quite serious being an adult. And I don't know, creativity and emotions and drive and excitement didn't necessarily get much airtime, I suppose. And so what you've said about, I could just cherry pick the bits that I love, and now you love every day. How beautiful is that? And I think the reason I wanted to kind of recap on that is because I know there are so many people out there who might be thinking, I've been doing it for a long time and I'm a little bit scared that if I leave it, there's nothing else for me. But the potential is huge, isn't it?
It really is. And as you were talking, the thing that came to my mind was a phrase, and I can't remember now whether I said it or she said it, but I had some counselling a number of years ago, and the most powerful thing that I took away was the line, "You have a choice."
Wow.
And I remember it constantly. And I remember emailing her sometime after I'd made my career change, because work had ended up, it wasn't why I ended up going for counselling, but it came up in it. And I emailed her, and months and months and months, probably a couple of years later, and went, I just wanted to let you know that this is the choice that I've made. And there is absolutely fear in making choice, and that fear that you might get it wrong, whatever get it wrong means. And I know you and I talk a lot about perfectionism and wanting to just banish it. But I think there is enormous fear. And I think the older you are, in lots of ways, you have more responsibilities, you've got bills to pay, you've got other people relying on you, that it can be really scary. But I remember one of the tutors on my course talking about, or sort of putting out there, what's scarier, carrying on doing something that day by day is just sapping every bit of energy and joy from you, or choosing a path that does light you up. I went along to a brilliant group who did and still do a lot of, all the work they do is outside, and there's a real coaching element to it as well. But I remember going on to the first session of that and saying, look, I just think and this was before I made my sort of business decision choice, said, I just feel like I've lost my sparkle. Mm-hmm. And it had just, I think, been squished under probably the shoulds and I read something this morning online about, teaching as an example, but so many jobs, it's a good job, it's stable income, it's this, it's that, it's the other, all the things that sound like a great path to be on. But if it is squishing you, if it's dampened out your sparkle, you might not be able to see it. But speaking to friends since, they said, I could see that you weren't really enjoying it. There was more and more to the job that I was doing that was just taking me further from the stuff that really mattered and that I really cared about. And I think that's a scary, but in some ways easy place to start, is just, what is it that lights you up? Whether it's at work or in your life, or what kind of films you choose to watch, or the books that you choose to read. If you had a day to yourself, what would you choose to do with it? What would you choose to put in that? That can be I don't know. I mean, that sounds pretty magical to me at the moment, just a complete day to yourself.
Sounds great.
Especially after the year that so many of us have had. But yeah, kind of just going back to basics of what do you love? Who are you drawn to online? What magazines do you find yourself reading? What is it you're interested? Which are the articles that you choose to read? And all of those things were clues to me to help me put stuff in the fruit bowl and to make sure there wasn't anything going in there, or realistically as little of the other stuff as possible. There's lots of things that we all still have to do in running a business that don't necessarily light us on fire, but there's enough of the other stuff that I don't mind, the admin chunks, stick on a bit of good music, no problem.
Exactly. And I just had a little thought there when you were talking. It takes us back to just breathe. Because when you think about it, when we are involved, when we're in the job, and, you talk about 3 days a week working, 2 days a week with your family, at what point do you really get to press pause and go, how do I feel right now? What am I loving? What am I struggling with? Has the balance tipped? We don't necessarily allow ourselves that. So I think that a great message that is coming through already from our conversation today is to allow ourselves time to breathe, to pause, to just take a moment to reflect how we're feeling at this moment, actually.
That speaks to me in every way. And one of my words, I don't do New Year's resolutions, but for the last couple of years, I've done kind of a word or a couple of words of the year, and space is one of mine this year.
Wonderful.
And it's always been important, but again, especially the last year that we've had, not having physical space, I think, has taken its toll on lots of people, whether it's not having enough space in your house, or suddenly there being lots of other people in your house, or having too much space. Just creating the kind of space that works for you physically, but also taking that space and time, I think, is incredibly important. And like you said, we kind of get on a path and keep going with it and don't often stop to question it. And I think that's what I love about coaching, is it gives people permission to stop and take 90 minutes for themselves, to be listened to, and to think without any agenda or any worry about upsetting somebody else. It's a completely independent space in which you have permission to think. And as you said, we don't all have massive chunks of time in every day, but even just a 5-minute check-in, or even a minute staring out the window with a cuppa, to just do that. What did I call it? I've done some work with the NHS, and we talk about how they do vitals checks, right? People, and working with them and saying, well, in the same way, let's say you're washing your hands before you do something, use that as as I'm washing my hands, what do I notice about my heart rate? What do I notice about my breathing? What do I notice about how grounded or otherwise my feet are on the floor, or my posture, or where my back's at? Just making tiny bits of space for those things can make such a difference to our ability to really know where we're at and check if we're okay. It's okay not to feel okay, but it gives us a clue as to, okay, so what do I need next? That's something I do regularly as a check-in in my Facebook group. Every week it's, I feel what, I need what. Because when we pause, we have the answers. It's just, do we pause often enough to give ourselves space to come up with what we need?
I love that. And I love that you give your Facebook group the prompts to, to really think on that, even if they have got a matter of seconds and they just glance at it, even if they don't have time to respond, even if they just glance at it, it's going to give them that thought, isn't it? Okay, how am I feeling? What do I need right now at this moment? I love that. you'll have heard me say before, I'm sure, Pam, that as women, I think we're very much expected to do all the things, and we're meant to be super women and do everything. I believe we can do absolutely anything we want, but I don't think we can do it all. So just thinking about women for a minute, how can we begin to build resilience in ourselves and in our lives? Do you have any sort of almost starting blocks that we could perhaps get ourselves onto?
I do, but before I do that, I've just got to share with you the fact that exactly what you just said. I'm going to show you, Jo, but I will read it out as well. On my notebook, I've got a postcard that says, "You can do anything, but not everything."
Oh,
and my son got busy with a label maker yesterday and has printed out a label. I didn't ask him to, but printed out a label that says, "You can do anything," that is now stuck just next to my desk. So yes.
I love that. And I love, and obviously people can't see, like we're saying, but I love there's inspirational pictures and quotes and things, cards and what have you around your desk area, which is just lovely. It's really lovely.
For me, it's a continuation of what I started in my office at school that I think looked different to everybody else's offices. It was full of colour and inspirational quotes, and there they are, visible prompts for me. And maybe that's a useful place to start is, what can women do? Is I think a lot of us feel challenged by doubt and not feeling, feeling that fear that you mentioned earlier and kind of wondering what to do next. I think having something visible as a prompt can be really powerful for helping us stop and check and challenge some of the thoughts that we might be thinking. So I do a lot of work around growth mindset. It's one of I have like a core 4 of resilience, and growth mindset is number 2. And using something really visible. So whether it's an affirmation, something like "you can do anything," or "I am enough," or "I am brave," they are all things that I have used and do use, whether it's something as a post-it stuck to my laptop or something that I repeat to myself when I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? That really helps to challenge that mindset that I do slide into when I'm tired, stressed, taking on something new, daring to contact somebody new. I really do slip into that. No, can't do this. Who do I think I am? So having something visible or something that is familiar to me that I can pause, check the truth of what I'm thinking and go, okay, right, let's try something else. And it is that, what would your best friend say to you? What would your sister, your mum, somebody kind and caring in your life, what would they say to you that would challenge that stuff that's going on in your head? So
and it disrupts the pattern, doesn't it? Then
it does.
It's so clever, actually. In fact, my mastermind group at the moment, something I've added in with this latest program is that I got them all to think about an affirmation that they're going to be using every day of the next 6 months. And we were talking about the way that people learn differently earlier. And I said to them, I don't mind if you're saying this, if you're singing it, if you make a beautiful visual, type something up or draw something and have the words on that, whatever works for you. And I think that seeing what you've got behind you there and, just talking about the simple post-it note on a computer, it's powerful, but so easy to do.
Yeah. And, you can pick something like that. If you do a quick Google of affirmations, you'll find stuff everywhere. I think the one that I found most powerful, and I talk about all the time now, is one that actually came through a coaching exercise of taking a thought or kind of going a bit deeper, a sort of a deeper level belief or assumption that we have about ourselves, writing that down, which is kind of a bit as a process, but writing that down and then really exploring it. Is it true? Is it useful? Who said it? Where did that thought come from? And then, saying, if I believed something more positive, if I believed the opposite were true, what would that be for you? And how would that change things? And that's where I took my I am risk averse, which I held on to quite firmly, but then through coaching challenged that and went, well, hold on a second. I, went to America when I was 20 to go and work at a summer camp. I didn't even know where in America I was really going. I didn't know anybody. I hadn't been to a summer camp myself. I didn't know what I was doing. I went traveling across America. I left my teaching job with nothing to do. When you take that stuff, you go, okay, right, yes, I can manage to send an email.
You Pam Cottman, are a professional risk taker. Total opposite from what you were telling yourself.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. And that's where that piece around both growth mindset and another bit of my call for is confidence. And so much confidence comes from our head. We hold ourselves back. And I say this as a collective because I know I'm not alone in this.
You're not.
We hold ourselves back probably more than anybody else will.
Yeah.
We are so reliant a lot of the time on other people, especially in the workplace, on other people's feedback or waiting for a performance management or an appraisal or meeting a target to somehow justify our existence and our worth. And actually, when we stop and think about the little wins every day, that is so empowering and a reminder that we don't need somebody else to tell us we're brilliant. We can do that with an affirmation. We can do that by saying, okay, as I do regularly, what have I done today, in the words of Heather Small, to make me feel proud? What have I done? And it doesn't have to be the massive stuff. I did a webinar a couple of days ago and I said, this isn't a competition, but just to be clear, it doesn't have to be something enormous. So I said, I'm really proud of the fact that, what had I done? I think I'd done a bit of yoga that morning, or I'd made a point of stretching in between one thing that I was doing and another. And it led to this flurry of comments on a webinar of going, oh yes, I managed to actually take a lunch break today. Yeah. I managed to do some exercise of some form. And I think we don't give ourselves enough credit for those bits that enable us to do the other bits.
Yeah. And I think that even, on that webinar, there probably would have been someone that hadn't really done anything and they'd have heard some of those small bits and thought, okay, maybe there is hope. Maybe I'm just going to start rewarding myself by doing the stretch between the phone calls or what have you. I really hear what you said as well about how we can not only investigate what we've been telling ourselves by kind of challenging it, but to overturn it completely. And I've done exactly that with my self-confidence. It's been my running kind of commentary in my little head for my whole life that I'm not confident and I didn't really believe in myself enough. And actually I've now got to the point where I've written a song called I Believe, and when the words came to me, and it was the words and the music that came at the same time, actually the whole song was like downloading through my head so quickly. It came really, really quickly. And I think I'm going to have to share it at some point, maybe in my Facebook group or something, because I think that the words would, as you said, this is a collective we. It's not just me that has felt like this. There are so many people out there. And I love that you have shared some of the things that you've turned around as well. I'm feeling quite emotional, Pam. This is lovely.
It is big stuff that we don't often talk about. And I think that's what I love about the work that you do and the platform and the space that you give for women to share all of it, share the path that they've been on, the path that they're still on, and the difficulties that we all have along the way. And I'm sure we would have talked about it at some point or commented on each other's posts at some point, but Glennon Doyle's book Untamed, and that line, we can do hard things. I read something she wrote recently about it, and the we bit is incredibly important. As we said, knowing you're not alone, but she said it's not just knowing we're not alone, but knowing that actually often we can do hard things, starting with ourselves, but to know that there are people that we can reach out to, and our community, our networks are incredibly important. I mean, I don't know when you started doing what you're doing now, if you heard this, but I had lots of people saying when I leave teaching, use your network, contact your network. And it felt like this onerous LinkedIn-y type thing that just sounded really terrifying. But actually, when you break networking down to maybe I'll just have a coffee with someone, or that person seems nice, I'll have a chat with them, which is pretty much what you and I did at that book event. And then we're just like throughout our kind of train journey back.
Yeah.
That's what proper connection is. And what I would say,
that's the word.
Group coaching program I've ever run, or every webinar, or my Facebook group, and I'm sure all the things that you do too, it is that it's not just that I feel like, hooray, I found some like-minded people. It's the support that you get. And I think that's where the next level of the work that I'm doing will come from, is for leaders to be that support network, for parents to be that support for their kids. So, if you think about another element of building resilience, it is around values. and what really matters to people. And I think creating a space in which you feel what matters to you is listened to and acknowledged and appreciated. I mean, what a difference that makes. I think back to the role that in theory I was supposed to be doing when I went back after my second maternity leave. I mean, I just looked at the description and went, where's me in that? None of that stuff is me. None of that's, it might be good development opportunities, but that's not who I am on that bit of paper. And it's absolutely affirmed to me that I wanted and needed to do something different. So that community, that tribe, that network, that connection, I think has just got stronger and more important, not just in resilience, but in enabling me to carry on doing the work that I'm doing. I would find it incredibly hard if I hadn't formed some kind of supportive connection around me, even though I'm a one-woman band.
I was going to ask you, what is there anything that you find quite tough about working for yourself?
Yes, pretty much everything we talked about, but but in and around the motivation piece. So I love what I do. As I said, I still can't quite believe I'm doing it. Mm-hmm. But especially in the last year, it's been such a stop-start year between lockdowns, out of lockdowns, kids at home for home learning. So just that kind of having to physically pick yourself up again. Yeah, I found that really challenging this year, and I have, as the year's gone on, really allowed some space, again, that word space, some space after, my eldest has gone back to school, to just have a kind of sit back and, that breathe again. So that motivation piece there, but also that bravery that we mentioned. I am braver than I realise, but I still find it hard sometimes to go, okay, I quite want to do this next. How do I do it? I am a bit of a procrastinator, and it's been my coach. I mean, yeah, oh, good.
Me too.
I'm there too. But I remember I had a session with my coach. It was our only face-to-face session last year at a point where we could manage it. And I remember saying to her, look, I want to do this thing, but I'm holding myself back. I basically need to kick up the bum. Can you facilitate that for me in this session? And thanks to the joy of coaching, that's what she did, and I made it happen. But the motivation and bravery, I would say, are the things that I find most difficult.
That's definitely going to resonate with so many people out there, including myself. So thank you for that. And it would be rude not to ask, what is the absolute best thing about working for yourself?
Oh, it's the flexibility, which I know is the dream of so many people. Whether people are parents or not, everyone, I think, deserves the right to have a flexible working life that enables them to do all the other stuff that tops them up. And I love that. For the last few years, I've made it to all the school events that I wanted to go to. I've been around for not all, but more school drop-offs and pickups than I ever would have been able to do while I was teaching, because the irony of being a teacher is you might be on time for your kid, for the kids you're teaching, but you're never going to be there for your own kids.
Of course not.
So yeah, the flexibility and the fact that, and again, this is a work in practice. I'm looking outside, it's a really sunny day. I could just say, I'm just going to go for a walk, but there is that to-do list still. So again, I would say it's a work in practice, but generally the flexibility to choose when I want to work, and to know that I can have more of those moments that I remember from school. I loved the moments where I would be driving off to a meeting in the middle of the school day. It felt naughty.
Yes.
To be in the car and driving out of the car park in the sunshine, radio cranked up, and I can do plenty of that now. So yeah, I am incredibly grateful and proud to have put things back in my fruit bowl, that and flexibility is one of those things.
Yeah, a really massive one. I that's amazing. And I just think that, a bit like we talked about, how when you're working, fast and hard and what have you, you don't necessarily stop to think how you're feeling. I think it's really important, actually, because we do have long to-do lists, and the buck stops with you, doesn't it, when you work for yourself? I think it's equally important when we work for ourselves to take that pause moment, that breathing moment, to just acknowledge it and think, actually, have I made the most of my flexibility this week? And just keep checking in, because it can also, life can roll on quite quickly, and you go from the week to the weekend, and suddenly you're back to Monday again. So wonderful. Make the most of that flexibility. That's really so positive. So we're coming towards the end of today's little conversation. It's been absolutely just wonderful, really, really wonderful. I'm so glad with how much we have been able to cover, and I can't wait to listen back already. But I like to ask one question at the end of each conversation here on the podcast. And as I've already mentioned, you know that the name of the business is How Does She Do It? Because I believe she doesn't do it all. Okay. Now, I wonder, is there one thing that you absolutely do and ensure that you do? Or is there anything, or it might be that there's something that you absolutely don't do anymore to ensure that you remain healthy, happy, and on track?
So I had a couple of things in mind, but I've changed my mind actually. So one thing I do now without fail, either every month or it's been every couple of months over the last year, is used to be I would take myself to a coffee shop, but now I just make myself a nice coffee here and I do some reflection and planning. And that reflection used to start with, what have I done? And I've changed that now. So there are 3 parts to my reflection. The first is, what have I learned? So I really consciously, and I find it really hard every time I sit down and do it, but once I get into it, I get there. So it might be, what have I learned as in a skill, but more often it's, what have I learned about myself, or what I've enjoyed, or what I've liked, or what have I noticed that I want to kind of put into practice another time. So I start with the learning. That's part 1. The second bit is, what have I achieved? So then that's when I allow the space, when I look back at my diary and go, oh my gosh, I've done this and I've done that and I've done that. And actually in there as well, along with the, what's the best bit about my business, really taking time to notice the wins. And the wins can be the kind of, what have you done? I've done a webinar, I've done this, I've had a, coaching session, but it's about the feedback as well, both in terms of how I've felt about it, but in terms of what people said. So yeah, part 2 is the achievement. And part 3 is, what next? And that's where I allow myself to dream big, small, tiny, whatever. Just say, okay, what do I want to do next with this? Where do I want to take it? So that's my 3-part reflection that I started. I've been doing it probably, 18 months or so. And I do it in brightly coloured pen in my notebook. And the what next enables me to do the monthly plans that you can't see. They're kind of tucked in the corner there. I plan on massive bits of A3 with Sharpies. And the bit that goes first in my plan is me. Because like you said, I wasn't always making the most of the flexibility. And so my number 2 bit of what I do/don't do is I make time for me. And I really try to notice, even if that is just a cup of tea, or it's I'm switching off and saying to everybody, I just need 5 minutes, or saying, putting on my email out of office, which I'll be doing probably at the end of today, in this for half term, saying I'm downing tools. I'm very open. I'm downing tools. I'm going to rest and recharge and spend some time with my family. Yeah. I'm not going to pretend that I am on all the time, because that doesn't work for me. And I know it wouldn't work for everybody else around me.
I love that. Really, really good. You spoke like a true teacher there, talking about your Sharpies and your A3 paper. And I love the visual side of the way that you work, actually,
thanks,
and the way that you plan. I find that really inspiring. So thank you for sharing that. So before we say goodbye, I wonder if there is anything you would like to share with our listeners, and also if you would like to let us know where they can find you as well.
So where people can find me first. So I am at Pam Cottman on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, depending on where you want to hang out. And I also we mentioned the Facebook group already. My Facebook group is called Resilient Women. It's for women of all ages and stages. I was thinking about it today. It's essentially for me at every stage of my life so far and still to come. And so we've got a lovely group of women in there. And as you said, regular prompts for thinking and reflection and sharing and fun as well.
Yeah, it's a brilliant group, a really brilliant group. People should definitely check it out.
Oh, thanks, Jo. I'm really proud of it. And it helps me as much as I think it helps everybody in there. So thank you for that. And in terms of what's coming up, so in September, I'm going to be running again my Resilient Women group coaching program. So I ran it last year. It kind of emerged from another program that I'd run, but it's now completely inspired by my Facebook group. And it's a 5-month group coaching program. So we have monthly calls. There is a Resilient Women journal that goes with it. And what I found from the women who ran it last time, what they appreciated most about it was, yes, the going through the different elements of resilience, of values, of growth mindset, of how we build confidence in lots of different ways, and self-care. But what they said they really loved was that it gave them time and space to focus on themselves, to put themselves first, and to do all of that with the support of a tribe of like-minded women. So I will, as I said, be running that in September and kind of advertising it beforehand. So hopefully that speaks to some of the people in your group and they might like to come and join us.
I'm sure they will. I will obviously ensure that I pop all of those links that you've mentioned and a link to the programme in the show notes as well. So anyone that might be driving right now can not worry at all about doing anything dodgy, like trying to write whilst they're driving.
Yeah, don't do that.
We wouldn't recommend that
No.
at all. So the show notes are the wonderful safe place where people can come and click through to directly to you after they've listened. Well, it's been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. It's been such a joy to see you again, to hear. I've learned more about you again, which I always love. So thank you for sharing everything that you have done today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I really have. I hope to see you in real life one time soon.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me. It has been a real pleasure to walk down memory lane a little bit and reflect on where I am now. So thank you for the opportunity. And yes, there will be a big hug, an actual real life hug coming your way, hopefully sometime very soon.
Wonderful. Be proud of yourself. Continue the celebration of all that you achieve. And thank you once more. Thank you so much for listening today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, I'd love you to take a moment to share and subscribe too. Come and join me over at How Does She Do It Life on both Facebook and Instagram. And until we speak again, I wish you a wonderful week ahead.